But yeah, look at this nice warp gate pushing action. This looks a lot like a big 4 warp gate push. Like a slightly large 4 warp gate push. You can do all the good usual stuff with the Guardian Shield, nice zoning with those force fields, Hydralisk in the back trying to help him stay alive, but yet more Stalkers getting warped in because there are just so many of these gateways. And this really is the typical style for the 2-gate. You open up with some early aggression, you pull back, and you surge forward with some huge aggression. Nice little transfuse there by Machine, trying to help his guys stay alive. And I was actually watching this game, and I was just like, oh god, Machine's done. And then, oh, the miracle occurs, and he's able to barely stay alive. But there's still more Stalkers coming and really trying to get in there. And this, I don't think anyone would be surprised of how this game ends up playing out, with Machine trying to hold off this huge aggression by White Ra, and White Ra trying to keep up huge aggression. Except, you know, scoot over to the Watchtower, because you get more vision. No reason not to do that. Yeah, typical, ordinary, uninteresting. I mean, the action's definitely fun, but conceptually it's pretty straightforward. Machine really doing a good job of holding in there. I like that he's trying to do a counter push to kill this pylon, but White Ra just has so many warp gates. Hydralisks just do so much damage to those. Jeez. Some more Zerglings coming in anytime you're low on money. Incorporating some Zerglings into that Hydra mix works really well, because then you actually end up spending all your larvae instead of having some left over because you're broke. White Ra feeling a little bit in the struggle zone, though. And this game is, I guess, what I would call the fun game of the 3. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to watch out the rest of this for just a little bit of entertainmental value. But still, so what I would say is great about this play is the same thing as before. 2-gate aggression into warp gate aggression. Not necessarily 7 warp gate aggression, but just warp gate aggression. I dislike the fact that there's no upgrades going on at the Forge. Scanning around White Ra's base, he's kind of in an all-in-ish position. There really are not... There's no transitioning that's been done. No robotics facilities, no Twilight Councils, nothing at all, and I think that is a gigantic blunder. I really think that there should be more Twilight Councils. But this just goes to show you that this entire build style is based on abusing this Stalker in the mid-game. This really goes to show how powerful a Stalker can really be. That you can just get a lot of them, and without any upgrades, just because they are so fast and have decent range, you can do a ton of damage. So White Ra going to continue to try to do a lot of damage. And we saw White Ra was even behind on the food of Machine, but still, because he has 7 warp gates, he can be so aggressive and just close off that last little hole. Didn't quite have the energy. Oh, he did have the energy. I guess the sentry was just a little bit far away. So, looks like White Ra just continuing to warp in, and god, still no plus upgrades. I mean, this is so all-in-ish. This is goofy. Just taking this, that Nexus over at the left side. Nice little Guardian Shield. Kind of want to scoot him in a little bit to the center of those Stalkers. But just so many Stalkers and Machine spreading his creep. Has he done anything else yet? No. Just trusting in the power of Hydralisks plus creep. Even getting the Queen involved. Time to bring her back. But yeah, just the strength of Stalkers is exactly what we are seeing here. And the reason I think that White Ra is expanding over here is probably because you actually normally win at this point. This is a serious, incredible achievement by Machine, that he did not die to this huge warp gate aggression, that he is able to stay alive. I've seen tons of players fall to this. Idra fell to Zion, who, not Zion, excuse me, Mind, the Protoss player, did this to Idra and just crushed him. That was Day 9 Daily 129 that is still corrupt. Just the beastly timing push of all these warp gates. Works very, 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 very well. And Machine is being a superhero by holding it off. However, at the same time, this is the sort of the transition that I'm not the biggest fan of. Just, well, I guess I'll put a hidden expansion. If anything, this should be the expansion that you take. Kill this off, expand, build cannons here, continue to apply the pressure and have everything very well defended, and then maybe after you get your 3rd up, then maybe you can transition to Twilight Councils, maybe other things. But, you know, sending some guys across map just feels a little Machine still trying to stay alive, doing a good response, getting his spine crawlers up. He is in a little bit of desperation mode. It's always going to be very, very tough to be able to deal with this sort of setup. But either way. Yeah, look at this. Okay, so this is exactly what bugs me. Well, if I'm getting a little bit of extra cash for my expansion, let's just go warp gates harder. Still no upgrades coming out yet. And here comes the huge push. And with Machine, look at that Hydralisk count. And even advancing forward with some of these spine crawlers, trying to get them involved. I mean, that's a brilliant play, but really it's the buildup of the Hydralisk that's going to be giving White Ra a lot of trouble. Plus the fact that its creep spread is so far forward, so all these Hydralisks can micro much more easily and get into position against these Stalkers much more easily. The fact that the Hydralisks are faster means they end up wrapping around the Stalkers much more easily. Notice here, actually I'm just going to back this up because this is a super important concept, so I'll actually back this up once more. So the faster units get the bigger concave by default. Notice right now we have 2 blobs. No concaves have been established. Now watch what the auto movement will do. Watch the Stalkers on the top. Notice that they now have the big concave because they can move faster. Notice how these edges are just a little bit curled. That's why speed upgrade for range units is so important. Or just having speed with creep preserved is also so important. Fortunately, the Hydralisks do an absurd amount of damage, so they're allowed to leave creep because they can just kill things. But I would really say that the reason White Ra didn't end up holding in this game and why this big push by Machine ended up working so well is because White Ra committed himself to just no upgrades, only warp gates, and that's it. And, you know, I would say that everything up to the 7 warp gates was great. Everything leading up to the 6-7 warp gate push is fine. Doing the 6-7 warp gate push is fine, but it's this after period where White Ra was a little bit not having the best direction that, oh man, some things kind of ended up falling apart. And I'm actually just going to blast through the rest of this game because I do want to get to the other 2 very, very sweet, exciting games. For any of you, again, who are trying to get these replays, you can get them at whitera.com. This is Machine and White Ra's best of 21, I think it was, that they played. They played 3 best of 7s. So, of course, you can easily get those replays from ghostcoaching.com or white-ra.com. And with this many Hydralisks and only gateway units, Machine's going to easily win. No upgrades on the Hydralisk. Hasn't really had the money to be able to do this at this point in time, but still, just such a forceful push. All the Overlords coming in, adding the extra creep, making it that much harder to deal with the Hydralisks. Just really, really solid play by Machine. I was actually really impressed by Machine, the fact that he didn't die to that warp gate push. So this isn't to say that the style of play by White Ra is bad. This is actually the most typical play in the world, to go 2-gate into big warp gate push. Used to be 2-gate into Colossus stuff, but we're seeing even more warp gate action from Protosses lately. And White Ra trying to get in here, but Machine's Hydralisks just kill things too quickly. The fire rate on those things is absurd. And this ends up being a good game right here. Once White Ra ends up not having any production capacity going through the last 2 seconds of the game, which is, again, not the important part. If this were a commentary on a tournament match, I would just be screaming and getting very excited about how he could possibly stay alive. But since I have seen this game, and you can all download this game, I'm just going to blast through it. Probe's valiantly defending. I still refuse to leave this game early. I will let it finish. I am determined to let it finish. But, you know, we're getting close to halfway done, so I'd appreciate if this game did end. You know what? Whatever, it's my show. I'll speed it up. Dun-da-da-da, Machine, more Hydralisks. Trying to get in there, White Ra trying to stay alive, hanging in there valiantly, but educationally this scenario is of no value. You know what, I'm just closing this. Oh hey, perfect timing. Looks like GLHF Italy decided to leave the game as well. So now we're going to think to ourselves, what are some other things that we can do? Because a lot of times people will see a, they'll watch someone do a style, and they will assume that you have to do everything to do the build. So for instance, if you saw this game by White Ra, or even if you watch some of my games going 2-gate, and I also go 2-gate into warp gate pushing, you would say, well, if I want to go 2-gate against Zerg, I go 2-gate, I expand, and then I go warp gates, and then I do this, and they treat it as one big thing. But what's cool is that you can break out these individual parts of a build and play around with them. So let's take a look at this theme of 2-gating played around with. Yeah, that's definitely a sentence. So going right over here to another game between Machine and White Ra. This one is going to be on Steps of War. Coming right in. It is loading. It is hopefully loading right. God, it always pauses at that same spot, and I always choke up because I'm like, if it crashes during my game, I'll be so embarrassed. But unfortunately, no embarrassment is necessary. There's White Raw doing the good old White Raw split, the 2 and 2 and 2. I'm not entirely sure why he necessarily does that, but it's still pretty fun. So we're just going to speed this game up just a little bit so we get the same sense of what's going on. And it's always so fun to get a lot of games of two similar players playing multiple times in a row because you really get a strong sense of exactly the patterns in this play. So here comes the 2-gate again. Now, one thing that I'm going to talk about this game that I didn't talk too much about last game is building placement. So we're still going to return to the concepts of the strategic decisions of 2-gate, but just to note, there